I watched my husband destroy our son, not with anger, not with violence, with jealousy, and the most painful part, the part that still keeps me awake at night, is that it took me years to see it for what it was. My name is Helen. I am 58 years old. I am a retired nurse from Glasgow, and I am going to tell you the story of the two men I loved most in this world, and how one of them spent 20 years quietly trying to break the other. My husband Richard was a good man in many ways, hardworking, reliable, present. He did not drink, he did not gamble. By every visible measure, he was a responsible father and husband. But Richard had a wound inside him that he never dealt with, a deep and private insecurity that had been there long before I met him. He had grown up with a father who never praised him, never acknowledged him, never once told him he was enough, and instead of healing that wound, he passed it on. Our son Thomas was extraordinary from the beginning, not in an obvious way, not loud or showy, but quietly brilliant. He read everything he could find. He asked questions that stopped adults mid-sentence. His teachers called me in to tell me he was one of the most gifted students they had taught in years. I came home and told Richard. He nodded and said, "Do not let it go to his head." That was the beginning. Every time Thomas achieved something, a good grade, a prize, a compliment from a teacher, Richard found a way to shrink it. Not cruelly enough that anyone outside could point to it, just enough to take the shine off, just enough to make Thomas doubt himself before the feeling of success had fully settled. Thomas won a regional science competition at 14. The school called it exceptional. Richard told him at dinner that the other children must not have been very good. Thomas got into one of the best universities in Scotland at 17. Richard told him it was probably not as competitive as it used to be. Thomas graduated top of his class. Richard did not come to the ceremony. He said he was not feeling well. I went alone. I sat in that hall and I watched my son walk across that stage and look into the crowd for his father. I will never forget that look. I made excuses for Richard for years. I told myself he did not know how to show pride. I told myself it was just his way. I told myself Thomas was strong enough to handle it. I was wrong about all three. By his mid-20s, Thomas had quietly stopped sharing anything with his father. No achievements, no plans, no dreams. He had learned the way children always learn these things, exactly how much of himself was safe to show. He moved to Edinburgh for work, then to London. The distance grew in miles, but I knew it was really growing in something else. He called me every week. He called his father almost never. Richard never mentioned it, but I could see it. The way he watched Thomas from a distance, with something that was not quite pride, and not quite love, and not quite anything I had a clean name for. It was only when Thomas came home for Christmas 3 years ago that everything finally broke open. Thomas had just been promoted to a senior position at his company. He was 31 years old, and he had built something real, entirely on his own. I was so proud I could barely contain it. At dinner, Richard made a comment. Small and quiet and perfectly aimed, he said. "I hope you are not getting ahead of yourself." Thomas put down his fork, and for the first time in his life he looked at his father and said, "Why have you never once been proud of me?" The table went completely silent. Richard did not answer. He looked down at his plate, and in that silence was every avoided ceremony and every shrunk achievement and every look in every crowd that Thomas had been carrying for 31 years. Thomas left the next morning. I stayed at the table with Richard after Thomas drove away, and I said, "You are going to lose him. If you do not change, you are going to lose him completely." Richard cried, the first time I had seen him cry in 30 years of marriage. He said he did not know why he was like this. He said he was proud of Thomas. He said he had always been proud of Thomas. I said, he does not know that, and not knowing it has cost him 31 years. They are talking now, slowly and carefully. Thomas agreed to one conversation, then another. It is not repaired. Some things do not repair quickly, but it is open. And open is better than the silence they had before. I share this because I know Richard is not unique. There are fathers everywhere carrying wounds they never healed, passing them to the children who deserved better. And there are children everywhere who achieved extraordinary things and looked into the crowd and could not find the one face that mattered most. If you are a father, please hear this. Your child does not need you to be perfect. They do not need grand gestures or expensive things. They need you to look them in the eye and mean it when you say, I am proud of you. That is all Thomas ever needed. That is all any of them ever need.